As you know, I was on the Chris Jericho Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea, Part 2. I did not go on the first cruise last year. But after this, there's a very good chance this will not be my last. And at the risk of sounding like I'm blowing smoke up the man's ass, I have to, before I get into the trip and everything else, I have to hand it to Chris Jericho and what he has been able to do. His band got invited. The way this all came about is that Fozzy was invited to work the Kiss Cruise about 5 years ago. And he does the Kiss Cruise and he comes out of it and he says to himself, I can do this myself. So he takes the idea to WWE, who he was still working for at the time, because he wants to have NXT talent on the ship. And of course, WWE says no. Vince McMahon is worried about people getting food poisoning because he heard about a cruise where everybody got food poisoning. Some bullshit excuse, instead of just saying, it's not our idea, and we're not going to make any money off of it, so fuck off. So he goes and talks to Triple H, and he tells Triple H, he says, I'm doing this cruise with or without you guys. And Triple H says, yeah, sure, no problem, go ahead. Do your cruise. So Jericho turns around and he signs a deal to bring Ring of Honor talent on the cruise. I think they had that, was a Sea of Honor or something they called it, tournament on the ship. And he does Jericho Cruise number 1, which goes well enough that he brings it back for an encore. Meanwhile, he signs a deal to work a match with Kenny Omega on the biggest New Japan show of the year. This is a couple years ago. He's always maintained that he would never work for another wrestling company outside of WWE anywhere on American soil because WWE is the pinnacle, and it didn't make any sense for him to burn a bridge or to work for anybody else. So on American soil, that was kind of his out, which allowed him to go do stuff with New Japan. But he always maintained, on American soil, I'm never going to work for another wrestling company. Japan, though, I guess is fair game. Then Tony Khan gets in his ear about this new startup called All Elite Wrestling. And Jericho makes a cameo at All In, dressed up as Pentagon. He knows that this thing is going to be the biggest independent show ever put together. And he wants to be part of it. He's a smart guy. So he works his way into a cameo on the show. Then he gets this amazing offer to join AEW for more money, he says, than he ever made on a single contract in all the years and all the contracts that he ever signed with WWE. Now, mind you, this man is almost 50 years old by this point, and he's saying that he's been offered a contract bigger than any he's ever been offered before. And he signs to become essentially the face of the company. And so much for not working for another promotion on American soil. Now he's running opposite WWE every week live on TNT. He wins their world title, he forms his own faction, he stumbles onto a new product with one stupid little remark, and suddenly he's got his own brand of champagne that sells 10,000 bottles in its first day on sale. And now, on cruise number 2, he sells out all the cabins, and AEW runs a television taping on the ship. And next year, they're doing it again, only this time the show will air live on TNT. Meanwhile, the cruise has turned into a great vehicle for him to promote his own band. His band and his bubbly. When you walked into your cabin on the ship, guess what was waiting for you in the room on the bed? A little bit of the bubbly. Smart. He is the smartest businessman in the business right now where talent is concerned. Because he's still performing in the ring. He's still a talent. But he is the smartest businessman out there right now when it comes to any of these wrestlers. And you got to respect the guy's moxie. He has now built a new brand with this cruise. This thing is going to be the new destination. That's what he's trying to make it. The new destination every year now for wrestling fans. And as somebody who had never gone on a cruise a day in his life before last week, he's onto something here. He has hit on something special. But I just look at this and I'm like standing on the pool deck at one point, and I'm looking at him performing. He's like doing a Fozzy concert. I'm looking at all the branding and all the banners and the bubbly being given out, and he's doing all of his songs. And I'm just thinking to myself, this SOB has created this whole cruise built around promoting every single thing that he does. He's going to wrestle on the cruise. He's going to sing on the cruise. He's got his products on the cruise. Whether you like the guy or not, you got to admit, it's smart. It is smart. I will say that I had a blast on this trip. So did seem like most of the 2,100 paying guests that they had, 846 of which, according to Jericho, were female. That's in response to all of the oxygen thieves who thought they were being very witty with their cracks about the cruise being a sausage fest. Oh, I don't see any women on the boat in these pictures. Well, that's funny because I saw plenty of ladies on the boat. Now, whether they were all wrestling fans or not, that I don't know. Many of them were. And I'm not even sure why any of that even matters. You know, for a lot of people, it's a vacation getaway. For me, I live in New York. It's cold as shit in January. Although right now it's not too bad, actually. It's in the 40s and 50s in New York. But typically, New York is a place in January and February, you want to go to a warmer climate. You want to go to a warmer destination. That was the mindset behind this whole trip in the first place. It's a getaway. You're getting away from civilization. You're on a boat in the middle of the ocean with all kinds of activities. You know, for the people who have asked me, and I'm going to get into all the different details here because I've had a lot of people ask me, what do they have to do and how much was it? I'm going to get into all that. I'm going to give you the whole primer on this whole trip here. But there's a gym, which I am proud to say at least I hit one day. At least I hit it one day. There's a gym, there's a spa, there's bowling, there's a rock climbing wall, there's a casino. If you're a degenerate gambler, then you go there. There's a pool, there's a hot tub, there's live wrestling every night, there's concerts, there's karaoke. You know, 1 minute you've got DDP yelling at people on the pool deck, not using proper form on Down Dog. In the room next door, Gabriel Iglesias is doing a comedy show. One level down from that, Jake Roberts is telling Macho Man stories and telling stories about a sick rib that he once pulled on Rick Rude involving a ring rat that I'm not going to repeat. You get a little bit of everything on this cruise. By the way, if you've heard him tell that story before, it's fucking sick. This guy's absolutely sick. Tons of wrestlers walking around everywhere throughout the week. Obviously, a lot of AEW talent, but also non-AEW talent and legends. They had Ric Flair was on the cruise. I never saw him, nor was I dying to find him. I really couldn't care less. I've met him before anyway. But Ric Flair was on the cruise. Diamond Dallas Page was on board to host some DDPY sessions. He did an 83 Weeks podcast with Eric Bischoff, who was there. Scott Hall was there. Jake Roberts, Chavo and Vicky, MVP, Victoria, Booker T. Booker T had a great answer for why he was able to do the cruise. As somebody who works for WWE, doing the pay-per-view kickoff shows every month, and he's a Fox employee, right? He's got the gig on Backstage every week. He said he could do it because I'm a grown-ass man, and I do whatever the fuck I want. That may be the best answer to a question about anything that I've heard in a very long time. I'm a grown-ass man, and I do whatever the fuck I want. Gotta love Booker T. One of the cooler moments for me was bumping into Jericho's dad, Ted Irvin. We actually bumped into him 3 different times on this trip, completely unexpected, completely unplanned. The first one wasn't even on the ship. I got into Miami a day early, and that night in Miami, before the cruise even started, we were walking along this main street. I forgot what street it was. It was closed off at night. They had all kinds of like art stands and stuff. And I look up, and I recognized him right away because he was just on Dynamite a few weeks ago. But there he is, New York Rangers legend, Ted Irvin. Could not be a nicer guy. And he was talking us up to the point his family had to pull him away. It's like, come on, we got to go here. And he's like, hey, find me on the ship. And he ended up finding us on the ship by accident. We didn't find him. He found us. There were nearly 24 matches on the ship spread out over the course of 4 days, including one on the first day between Britt Baker and Allie that was just painful to watch. I mean, this was a horrendous match. And there was another non-televised match a couple of days later, the first mixed tag team match in AEW history, with men being allowed to fight the women and vice versa, with Kenny Omega and Rijo. I didn't even know Rijo was on the cruise. Apparently she flew in from Japan. It was Kenny Omega and Rijo. Kenny Omega's a big Rijo fan. Teaming up to take on Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford in what I thought was actually a damn good match. the complete opposite of whatever that Britt Baker match was. This was a damn fine match. I'm not going to spoil the outcome because I don't know if they may use this on Dark this week or not, so I won't say who won. But we were supposed to get a rematch between Jon Moxley and Sammy Guevara in the first match on day one, and Sammy did come out, but he did not wrestle. He only did an angle later on where Moxley finally caught up to him and he planted him with the paradigm shift. In fact, Sammy did not wrestle at all on the cruise, and when I spotted him by the elevators, his ankle was all taped up. Apparently, he injured his ankle a week before, not in a match, but trying to take off his shoes. I don't know if he rolled his ankle, if he broke something in his ankle, but he hurt his ankle. I don't get the sense it's very serious. He was walking around on it and everything, but that's a hell of a way to get injured, trying to take your shoes off. Among those 20-plus matches that they had on the cruise, there was a Dynamite taping on Tuesday while we were docked in the Bahamas. Great atmosphere. It really did, being there live was a lot of fun. It was very windy. And when I watched it back on TV, it came through on the audio, unfortunately. I'm not sure that there's anything they can do about that unless they put netting of some kind up. If they could somehow put 15-foot netting, maybe, attach it somehow all around the ship, that doesn't sound practical. You're in the middle of the ocean. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. But very much had the look and feel of one of those old Club La Vila Spring Break Nitro shows from back in the day, right down to somebody getting thrown into the pool. Jim Ross noted that he was not wearing his trademark cowboy hat for fear that it would fly away. We had the AEW Tag Team titles on the line in the opener. SCU defending against Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Hangman and Kenny get the win. This was the first title change in AEW history in an excellent opener. They are still teasing dissension between Page and the rest of the Elite. The Bucks came out and they were celebrating with Kenny, and just the look on Hangman's face like, oh, you're celebrating with him and not me, I see. So he leaves the ring and he jumps into the crowd and they body surf him, and he's drinking beer because he's got a drinking problem, of course. So this was great. And now the inevitable match is against the Young Bucks, which I figured is where this whole thing was going to end up to begin with. I thought the Bucks would beat SCU to win the belts last month, and this was going to be the inevitable match. So they took the long way, and instead we have Hangman and Omega, I guess, will be the ones defending the belts against the Bucks whenever they decide to do that match. I would guess at the Revolution pay-per-view next month would be my guess. We had Britt Baker against Priscilla Kelly. She beat Kelly with the lockjaw. So after the match, Tony Schiavone gets into the ring. He's wearing his Caribbean gear. His short-sleeve island shirt is Tony Schiavone here. He gets into the ring to interview Britt Baker. And Britt Baker proceeds to cut a heel promo. She's mocking Tony for working at Starbucks, which, in fact, I don't know that he still does, but a number of years ago, I think this was before he even started his podcast with Conrad, it was just something he wanted to do. I mean, he's always been doing the minor league baseball and football announcing down there in the Atlanta area. But he just one day said, I want to become a barista at Starbucks. And he did, in fact. He was, for a time, working at Starbucks as a barista. So she brings this up and she says, you were working at Starbucks and, you were a shitty barista, and I'm proud of you because you went from that to where you are now. And everybody looks up to me. I'm the hottest woman on this boat. Just look at me. I'm smart and I'm educated. I'm a dentist. I didn't realize on TV they cut the promo off midway through. Now, maybe it was designed that way. She talks so much about herself, we're just going to cut her off. I thought this was no good. I do think turning her heel is the way to go. She's a fucking dentist. Nobody likes the dentist. All due respect to all the dentists out there. People are terrified of the dentist. You can have the most immaculate teeth in the world. Nobody likes people poking around their teeth and their gums with sharp instruments. Nobody likes root canals. Nobody likes having a cavity filled or a tooth pulled. How she was a babyface to begin with, I'll never know. So her being a heel is the correct move, but it doesn't mean that her matches and promos are automatically good all of a sudden. They are not. We had the Inner Circle, Chris Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz. taking on the Jurassic Express, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt. One of the best moments from any of the matches, all crews, was Jericho coming out to Judas, the crowd singing along, and even when they cut the music off, the crowd said, "Fuck that, we're going to finish this song," and they finished it out. It's a great moment. Jericho pinned Marco Stunt after hitting the Judas effect. He still can't figure out Jungle Boy, still can't put him down, but Marco made for some pretty easy prey. MJF beat Joey Janela. Janela was up top, and he looked out by the stage, and there was Kip Sabian and his legit ex-girlfriend, Penelope Ford, making out with Kip Sabian, and that distracted him, and he missed his elbow drop, and then MJF used his version of the Crossroads, which he calls the Double Cross, spiked Janela right on his head and got the pin. So MJF gets the mic, and he's running down Cody, and he's running down the fans, and, says Cody last week talked about how MJF is just a chapter in his book. And MJF said, "You're right, I am a chapter in your book. I'm the last goddamn one." So Cody shows up, and MJF reminds him, "You can't touch me, because if you do, there's no match at Revolution." But that doesn't mean that the Young Bucks can't touch him. So as he goes to leave, he turns around, and he gets a double super kick, and the Bucks drag him over to the swimming pool, and they chuck MJF into the pool. He's flailing around like he can't swim. You knew somebody was going in the pool, and it turned out to be MJF. And they ended the taping with Jon Moxley beating Pac in a match where the winner would meet Chris Jericho for the AEW Championship at Revolution next month. Elevated Death Rider wins it. A very good match between Pac and Moxley. This Wednesday, Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz team up again, this time to take on Darby Allin and Private Party. The Young Bucks take on The Butcher and The Blade. And Cody wrestles Kip Sabian. So that is the lineup for Dynamite coming up this Wednesday. So on the last day of the matches, which would have been Thursday, and I have no idea if any of these matches are ever going to see the light of day, if they're going to be used on AEW Dark, I have no idea. But the final night had Cody beating Joey Janela in the last match, and then he says, "We need some baby faces out here, and somebody back there, please, come on out." So out comes SCU, and Daniels cuts a speech, "I've been doing this 27 years, and this is one of the best times of my career," and Cody calls out Tony Khan. And Moxley's out there as well, but he calls out Tony Khan, and Tony comes out, and again, people were giving Tony shit when he did the whole stunner thing a few months ago. And I said at the time, it's not a big deal. It did not air on television. It was, I think, Steve Austin's birthday. And they were just being silly. They called him into the ring. He did a stunner. Who the fuck cares? I don't get the sense that Tony, when he says that I'm not going to be an authority figure on TV, I don't want to be on TV, I get the sense he's telling the truth. He came out here. They weren't even on TV. And he looked nervous as all hell, like he just wanted to say something real quick. He thanked everybody. He put the mic down. He couldn't wait to get out of there. He did not want to be there. So we got Moxley then gets the mic. And he's got the eye patch on and everything. He looks like a pirate. And so Pirate Moxley takes the microphone. He says, when I was a kid, when I was younger, one of my favorite wrestlers was the Sandman. And he was going to do his best Sandman impersonation. The only problem was he didn't have any beer cans. So he said, "We don't have any Budweisers, but we've got a bunch of fucking White Claws. So we're going to make do." And he guzzled one of them down, and he smashed the can against his forehead a whole bunch of times. I don't think he bled, but he did his best Sandman impersonation.
I just realized this might be the only opportunity I have to do it. Oh, yeah! When I was a kid, for a brief period, my favorite wrestler was the Sandman. I don't have any Budweisers, but we got a bunch of fucking White Claws, so we're gonna make do.
But the best part of all of this really was the Moxley cruise. we got Jon Moxley karaoke. I don't know about you guys. Some people hate karaoke. They're not very good at it. They just don't get the appeal of it. I like karaoke. I'm not one to say whether I'm good or bad at it, but I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it. I have my song that I do, my go-to, and everybody has, their song that they like. Anyway, Jon Moxley, I didn't get to do any myself. I wasn't doing that, but I did watch Jon Moxley doing karaoke. He sang Sweet Caroline. That I did not see live, but I did catch him singing Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. With Priscilla Kelly and Darby Allin, he joined in during the climax of the song. And Moxley later on did The Bad Touch by the Bloodhound Gang, which is an oldie but a goodie. I say oldie, of course, goes back to the late 90s now, is considered oldie, I guess. So I managed to record some video of the latter two, which I will include when this hits YouTube. But you're going to hear me talking over it, unfortunately, because if I play the audio, the YouTube gods will get angry with me and they'll copyright strike it. So even karaoke, they can strike you for it. If a fucking car drives by outside while I'm live streaming and they're playing Bop by Hanson, they can strike me. Which, in this neighborhood, I guarantee you that will never ever happen. But if it did, YouTube would know about it. So I'll play the video on the YouTube clip. But if you want the video with the audio, it's up on my Twitter right now, at Solomonster. If you want to judge for yourself how good of a karaoke performer Jon Moxley is. He's got the voice of... his voice is a lot closer to Vince McMahon, to be honest with you. He sounds a little bit like he's been gargling gravel or concrete. But if you want to see the video with the audio, at Solomonster on Twitter, people loved that Bohemian Rhapsody video. Last I checked, it had over 140,000 views. And I think half of that 140,000 probably tagged Renee Young on the video. So I'm sure she must have seen it by now. I mean, hell, she's probably heard it herself. In the shower. Maybe in bed. Who knows? Sing a little Queen as things start to get hot and heavy. Priscilla Kelly also sang Wanna Be by the Spice Girls. And Nyla Rose sang I'm on a Boat by The Lonely Island and T-Pain. Luchasaurus, he sang some songs without his mask on, and Marco Stunt sang a little bit as well. He also joined Jericho on stage at one point during his Fozzy concert. I got video of Luchasaurus choke-slamming Marco Stunt into the crowd, who then body surfed him before sending him back.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're on this fucking boat together, right? No. We are on this boat. We are a fucking family tonight, baby! So let me tell you something. My partner Luchasaurus is gonna choke slam me into you guys, and we're gonna crowd surf this motherfucker!
Choke slam! Choke slam!
Moxley was wearing his eye patch through all of the karaoke nonsense to sell the storyline injury from that spike to the eye from Chris Jericho. So anybody doubting his commitment to kayfabe, you can doubt no more. Moxley looked like he was having the time of his life on this cruise. He stole some of Jericho's thunder away. It was less the Jericho cruise and more the Moxley cruise. And they're nuts if they don't have him back next year for an event called Moxley Sings the Hits. I think they have to dedicate a whole karaoke session to him just singing. The fans can choose. I think the fans should be allowed to choose what song they want him to sing, and then he should be forced to sing it. If that isn't an attraction on the cruise next year, then they're doing something wrong. But he was having a blast. And it is amazing what being away from shitty creative will do to a man's happiness. No inoculations, no gas masks. He seems like a happy guy. The other realization I came to, having listened to it a bunch of times now, is that Moxley's theme music in AEW is fantastic. I may like it even better than the instrumental that he used in WWE. And that was a great song too. You can decide for yourself. It's up on iTunes and Spotify right now if you want to download it. It's called Unscripted Violence by Violent Idols. They have a whole bunch of AEW themes up there now. Jurassic Express is up there, Darby Allin, Pac, they have a few others. The Orange Cassidy stuff, everybody said, oh, you gotta put the Orange Cassidy gear on. Don't shave and, go dress up as Orange Cassidy. You gotta meet Orange Cassidy. The two of you have to meet. You have to take a photo together. You've got to be in the same place at the same time. And that coward was not on the cruise. That cowardly imposter was somewhere else. He was not on this cruise. None of the best friends were. Trent wasn't there. Chuck wasn't there. Chucky, whatever the fuck. And the Orange Cassidy imposter was not there either. So I took it upon myself to take his place and got some amusing photos with Cody and Hangman, the Elite, SCU. Actually, all of them except Cody were cool in terms of doing the kind of the unenthusiastic Orange Cassidy thumbs up. I mean, Cody was nice and all. He was the only one, though, out of everybody who didn't stand up when people came up to take their photo during the photo session, which is fine. I mean, whatever, I guess. But everybody else did. Everybody else was cool about it. I got, they played along. They were great. But one of the peak moments of the day during the photo stuff on the ship was, so MJF is doing one of the photo sessions, has this look on his face like he doesn't want to, and I take that back. Actually, MJF was the other one who did not stand up, other than Cody, for the photos. But with MJF, you can understand it. It's part of his shtick, right? He doesn't want to be there. He's surrounded by a bunch of wrestling nerds and geeks. He'd rather be anywhere. He'd rather jump off the ship than have to do this. But he's sitting there with this puss on his face, and this fan in a wheelchair comes rolling up to him for his photo. And MJF he looks at him, and he says, well, here comes Hot Wheels. And the guy comes over and he says, I'm going to do something for you that I would not do for anybody else. I'm going to do something that you, and he's pointing at the guy in the wheelchair, I'm going to do something that you could never do. And he stood up to take the photo. Look, you can tell by the way the guy in the wheelchair, he loved it, okay? I mean, obviously, he loved it, but the man never broke. The whole point is the man never broke the entire trip, no matter where I saw him, if it was in an elevator, if he was at a photo op, he never broke the entire time I saw him on. And you can bitch all you want to, as many people did. My God, the softies who came out to attack me for posting that. You can bitch and moan and whine and piss and complain all you want to. Oh, what an awful thing. What a horrible person you are, laughing at something like that. Relax. He gets paid to be a douchebag. Take a pill and relax. Okay? I know it might be that time of the month for you. Take a pill, you'll be all right. He was an equal opportunity offender on this cruise. The next person, someone, shall we say, on the heavier side, walked up for their photo with Mr. MJF, who looked into the camera and said, say diabetes. Then the next guy walked up. He had a barbed wire tattoo around his arm. And for him it was, say virgin. Other people, he couldn't even stand to look them in the eye. He took his $45,000 diamond ring that he won. He shoved it in people's faces for them to kiss. I mean, this guy was on the entire time. I admire that. He was actually on my flight back to New York. He and Private Party. It was a private party on Delta Airlines back to New York. Those are all the New York boys. I think Ortiz was on there as well. I don't know where Santana was, but Ortiz was on the flight too. So this was a cruise to Nassau. We only had one day in Nassau. We were docked one day, and if you wanted to be in the audience for the Dynamite taping, you had to be back by a certain time. So we were kind of limited in what we could do. We ended up doing this Blue Lagoon Island sea lion excursion. So you get on a boat, and so we get on this other boat, right? We get off the big boat to get on the smaller boat. And who do we see the moment we walk on the boat? The Young Bucks. They're going to do the sea lion excursion with us. Cool. Okay. So we take the boat to Blue Lagoon Island, and basically on one side you have the beach, and you can just hang out by the beach and do whatever you want. And on the other side they have the sea lions. And, you're going to go, and they're going to show you, they're going to do tricks, and you're going to pet the sea lions, and you take your picture with them, whatever. This is what the larger group had decided on. You could do Atlantis. They have a water park at Atlantis. It's kind of pricey, though, very touristy. You could do, they were going to do something with stingrays, and I vetoed that. I don't want to be anywhere near the stingrays. So we settled on the sea lions, and that was fine. You pretty much, though, have your pick of what you want to do. So if you're wondering, does everybody have to do the same thing? No, you don't even have to get off the ship if you don't want to. You can stay on the ship the entire time. But you kind of feel cooped up after a while. So you get off and you pay for whatever excursion you want to do. You just got to make sure you get your ass back to the boat in time. Otherwise, you're up Schitt's Creek. You're gonna be taking a flight back home. That's what you're gonna be doing. Jericho's already announced a third cruise for next year, February 1st through February 5th, the week before the Super Bowl. Again, on the Norwegian Pearl. This time they're going to be docking not in Nassau, but in Freeport, Grand Bahama Island. I know that area was devastated by Hurricane Dorian last year, so it's kind of surprising that they're going there. Maybe they figure a year from now things will kind of be back to normal, but I would be surprised. They got just destroyed by that hurricane last year. So I would be very surprised if that area was really back up and running, the way it was before. But I guess they figure it'll be good enough to dock in Grand Bahama Island next year. Everybody in my group is open to going again next year. Nothing is set in stone. This is my first year not going to WrestleMania since 28 in Miami. So this was my big vacation for the year. And it looks like going forward, the Jericho cruise may possibly displace WrestleMania as our annual trip. At least until they bring Mania back to Las Vegas. When they bring Mania back to Vegas, they haven't been to Vegas for a WrestleMania since 1993. If they bring Mania back to Vegas, which I am convinced is going to happen in 2022 for WrestleMania 38, if we assume that LA is getting WrestleMania next year, and that seems to be the belief, is that WrestleMania will be in Los Angeles in 2021, then there's a good chance they end up in Vegas at that new football stadium in 2022. And if that happens, then I have to go. But, I met a lot of people on this trip, not as many as I would meet for Mania weekend, like when I host the meetup events. But shout out to Greg, good mic work on YouTube. We've talked over the years. We never actually had a chance to meet. And I got to hang out for a while with him and his better half, who is a huge Bret Hart fan, even a bigger fan maybe than I am. So that was cool to see her, pictures of her decked out in Bret Hart gear. Shout out to Nicholas from Belgium, the Belgian Brute from our PayPal family. I had a great conversation with him. He was kind enough to bring authentic Belgian chocolates from his family and make them at their shop, and he brought them, and that was very kind of him to do. Scott Woodford, another member of our PayPal clan. I met Scott before in Vegas for Double or Nothing, but he and I chatted for a long time. Scott lost his leg a few years ago. I've never heard him complain once. He's always had a good sense of humor about things, and he goes on these trips, and he has the time of his life, and he's a good dude. So I was glad to see him again, and Christian, and anyone else I'm forgetting, I apologize. But that's always a favorite part of these wrestling trips for me. I get to meet people who listen to the podcast and talk to them and hang out for a little bit. Now, I've heard from people asking, how much did it cost you to go on this cruise? How much is a cabin if I want to go next year? And do I have to pay all at once? Or can you pay in installments? Just relaying my own experience here. The trip in total cost me around $2,000. Now, mind you, there were 5 of us, okay? 3 of us shared a room together, which is not ideal, but it did help save a lot of money. Because we split it 3 ways, though, we were able to spring for a mini suite with a balcony. And I will tell you that if you can, a room with a balcony is the way to go. I spent a lot of time out on that balcony just looking out into the ocean. It is fantastic. If you can spring the extra money for a cabin with a balcony, then absolutely get one. But I would say it ran each of us, for the cabin split 3 ways, it ran each of us about $800 or $900. And yes, we paid in, I think, about 4 installments it was, throughout the year. So then you factor in everything else, the meals, the excursion in Nassau, which costs money, airfare to get there. You tack on $240 in taxes and fees, and it comes out to about $2,000. You can do it for less. You can absolutely do it for less than what we did. But if you're going by yourself, and I would always say, better to find at least one other person to go with. But if you're going by yourself, you're not getting a cabin for less than $1,500. And that's the low end of it. It's just not going to happen. But as part of what we spent, we paid for this specialty dining package. It gave us 3 meals at some of the nicer restaurants on board. That saved us a little bit of money, so that worked out well. There was an Italian restaurant. There was a steakhouse that we ate at, a hibachi place. The rest was the buffet. And they have, look, there's a ton of restaurants. There's a ton of bars. My one criticism was that the internet on board was atrocious. And I was the idiot who caved, and I paid for what was supposed to be full access to email and web browsing and social media. And the social media stuff is really barely the only thing that worked for me. But then again, I have to remind myself, we're on a boat in the middle of the frickin' ocean. So what do you expect? But the way I look at it is this, and my friend made a good point. If they can master Wi-Fi 35,000 feet in the air on airplanes, you would think they could do the same here. But I get it. You're in the middle of the sea, and I'm a slave to my phone, as many people are, and trying to be in the loop on everything at all times, when you just got to enjoy being on vacation sometimes. You got to forget about all that shit. I can't help it. I know, put the phone down and just enjoy what you're doing. I know. But I was warned in advance how bad the Wi-Fi might be. That's why I didn't bother bringing my laptop with me. That's why I couldn't go live for a Dynamite stream after the show on Wednesday. There was no way. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I left it at home. But if you do choose to go next year and you plan on getting a lot of work done, don't. Just go and have fun. The work will be there waiting for you when you get back, just as it was for me, I assure you. But on the whole, I really enjoyed it. Didn't get sick or anything like that. You take your Dramamine, you'll be fine. If you've been on a cruise before, a non-wrestling cruise, then all of this is not news to you. But a lot of people have never gone before, and I was one of those people. And now that I've done it, would I do it again? Absolutely.